The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the soft hum of conversations filled the elegant New York City café. It was a chilly afternoon, and the streets outside bustled with people wrapped in warm coats, their breath visible in the crisp air. Inside, the atmosphere was calm, with patrons enjoying their lattes and pastries, absorbed in quiet discussions or lost in their own worlds. Sitting at a secluded corner table was Barron Trump, the son of former President Donald Trump. Tall and composed, he had developed a reserved demeanor over the years. The media had often speculated about him, but he had largely remained out of the public eye. Today, he was simply a young man trying to enjoy a quiet afternoon alone with a book and a cappuccino. He was flipping through the pages of The Art of War, engrossed in its philosophy, when the serenity of the café was abruptly shattered. A man middle-aged with an unkempt beard and an intense glare stood up from his table nearby and pointed at Barron. "You don't belong here," the man bellowed, his voice dripping with contempt. "You and your family have done enough damage to this country." The café fell silent. Heads turned, and a wave of tension rippled through the room. The barista at the counter froze, mid-pour, and a few customers exchanged nervous glances. No one had expected such an outburst, especially directed at the young Trump. Barron lifted his gaze slowly, his blue eyes calm yet piercing. Unlike the man, he didn't react with anger or defensiveness. Instead, he took a deep breath and set his book down gently. "Sir, I don't believe we've met," Barron said, his voice steady and composed. "Would you like to sit and talk?" The man's face turned red with frustration. "I don't need to talk to you. I know exactly who you are." Barron nodded slightly, as if he had expected this reaction. He could feel the weight of every gaze in the room, watching to see how he would respond. The easiest option would be to ignore the man, or perhaps leave the café. But something in Barron refused to take the easy way out. He had been raised in the limelight, but that didn't mean he had to be defined by it. "I understand that my last name carries a lot of history, sir, and I understand that you may have strong feelings about my family," Barron said, his voice unwavering. "But I am not my father. I am my own person. And if you have something to say, I'd rather listen to you than have you shout across the room." A murmur spread through the café. The customers, who had initially braced for confrontation, now watched in curiosity. No one had expected such a poised response from someone so young. The man hesitated, his anger battling with something else perhaps, surprise or even respect. He had expected arrogance or defiance. Not this. "You think you can just sit there, acting all noble?" The man scoffed. "Your family has hurt people. My brother lost his job because of your father's policies. Do you know what that did to my family?" Barron's expression softened. He knew he couldn't undo the past, nor could he erase the pain others had endured. But he also knew that anger alone never built bridges. "I'm truly sorry for what happened to your brother," Barron said. "I can't change the past, but I can listen. Tell me about him." The café remained hushed. The man blinked, caught off guard by Barron's response. For a moment, he seemed unsure of how to react. He had come prepared for a fight, not for a conversation. "He was a factory worker," the man said, his voice lower now, less aggressive. "Worked for 20 years, and then suddenly, the plant shut down. No warning, nothing, just gone. And we struggled. My whole family struggled." Barron nodded, his gaze never wavering. "That sounds incredibly difficult. I don't pretend to know what that's like, but I can see how that would cause a lot of pain. And I won't dismiss your anger. You have every right to feel the way you do." The room, still silent, felt charged with an unexpected depth of emotion. The man, who had moments ago been filled with rage, now looked more conflicted than anything else. "You really think words are gonna fix anything?" the man muttered, his voice quieter now. Barron took a sip of his coffee before responding. "No, but understanding each other is a start." The man stared at him for a long moment, and then, without another word, he turned and left the café. A slow murmur broke out among the customers. Some looked at Barron with admiration, others with curiosity. The barista, still behind the counter, gave him a small nod of approval. Barron picked up his book, his heart still steady despite the weight of what had just happened. He knew this moment would likely end up on social media, dissected by people who would have their own opinions, but that didn't matter to him. He had responded, the only way he knew how, with dignity, patience, and a willingness to listen. As he glanced around the cafe, he noticed a young woman, perhaps in her late 20s, sitting near the window. She had been silently observing the entire incident, her eyes filled with curiosity. As Barron returned to his book, she stood up and slowly approached his table. "That was impressive," she said softly. "Most people would have reacted differently." Barron looked up, offering a polite nod. "Sometimes, the best way to handle anger is with understanding." She smiled. "Maybe, but not everyone is capable of that." Barron shrugged. "We all have a choice." She hesitated for a moment before extending a hand. "I'm Sophia, by the way." Barron shook her hand, a small but genuine smile touching his lips. "Nice to meet you, Sophia." And with that, the afternoon took an unexpected turn. The incident at the cafe had come and gone, but its echoes lingered far beyond the walls of the cozy establishment. Within hours, a video of Barron Trump's calm response to the enraged stranger had gone viral. Social media platforms exploded with discussions, debates, and admiration for the young man who had faced hostility with an unexpected grace. News outlets picked up the story. Some hailed Barron as a symbol of dignity and composure, while others speculated on what his actions meant for the political legacy of his family. The internet was ablaze with reactions, and even those who had never given him much thought before were suddenly intrigued. Meanwhile, Barron himself had no interest in the media storm. The following day, he returned to his usual routine, attending classes, engaging in his hobbies, and attempting to maintain a semblance of normalcy in his otherwise extraordinary life. But he was about to realize that his small act of patience had set forth a chain reaction he never could have anticipated. A knock at the door. 2 days after the incident, Barron was at home reading when a knock at the front door interrupted his focus. Expecting it to be one of the household staff, he set his book aside and made his way to answer it. To his surprise, standing there was Sophia, the young woman from the cafe, who had complimented him on his demeanor. "Sophia," he asked, raising an eyebrow, "what are you doing here?" She hesitated before replying. "I know this is unexpected, but I had to find you. There's something you need to see." Curious, Barron stepped aside and let her in. She pulled out her phone and showed him a post from a man named Daniel Fisher, the same man who had yelled at him in the cafe. The post read, "I was blinded by anger. I judged a young man before knowing who he really was. But that conversation made me think. I've spent years being consumed by resentment. Maybe it's time to let go and start listening. Thank you, Barron." Trump. Barron's eyes scanned the words carefully. It was an unexpected turn, but one that left a strange warmth in his chest. He had never expected his interaction with Daniel to lead to self-reflection, let alone public acknowledgement. "He wants to meet you again," Sophia added. "Not to argue, but to actually talk." An unlikely conversation a few hours later. Barron found himself sitting across from Daniel Fisher once more, this time at a quiet park bench rather than a tense cafe setting. Daniel looked different. His posture was less rigid, his eyes less hardened. "I don't know why you agreed to this," Daniel admitted, "but I figured you deserved an apology in person." Barron nodded. "I appreciate that. But, more than an apology, I'm interested in understanding what changed your mind." Daniel sighed. "The truth. I've been angry for so long, I forgot why I was fighting. But when you didn't retaliate, when you actually listened, it made me realize I've been shouting at shadows instead of confronting real issues." Barron remained silent, letting Daniel speak his heart. "My brother did lose his job, and it hurt our family. But I can't blame everything on one person or one administration. I see that now. Maybe, instead of focusing on the past, I should try to be part of the solution for the future." Barron offered a small smile. That's a powerful realization. The conversation continued, evolving from politics to personal struggles, regrets, and hopes. By the end of it, both men stood, shaking hands. It wasn't about agreement, it was about mutual respect. The bigger picture as days passed, the story continued to gain momentum. People from opposing viewpoints began engaging in discussions, inspired by what they had seen unfold. Online forums, that had once been divided by hatred, now had threads of people attempting to understand each other. Schools even began using the video as an example of conflict resolution. But the effects of Barron's actions didn't stop there. Influential figures in media began calling for more civil discourse in political discussions. A well-known journalist invited Barron for an interview, not about politics, but about handling conflict and fostering unity. Though he was hesitant, Barron ultimately agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to encourage meaningful dialogue. During the interview, Barron spoke about the importance of listening rather than reacting, of patience over hostility. His words resonated with many, and soon, the video of his interview became another talking point across the country. An unexpected invitation-only evening. As Barron was scrolling through his emails, one subject line caught his eye. Invitation to speak at Columbia University. The email was from a professor who specialized in political discourse and had seen the viral videos. He invited Barron to give a talk on the role of empathy in modern political discussions. Barron stared at the screen, unsure of how to respond. Public speaking had never been his ambition, but something about this invitation felt significant. He took a deep breath and typed his reply. "I'd be honored to come." The talk was scheduled for the following month. When the day arrived, the auditorium was packed. Students, faculty, and even members of the public had come to hear what Barron had to say. As he stepped onto the stage, he felt the weight of expectation on his shoulders, but he also felt a sense of purpose. "I never expected to be here," he began, his voice steady. "But maybe that's the point. Sometimes, the most meaningful conversations happen in the most unexpected ways." He went on to recount the incident at the café, what he had learned from it, and why he believed that true progress could only come through dialogue and understanding. When he finished, the audience erupted into applause. Barron had never sought the spotlight. But now, it was on him for all the right reasons. And while the world debated his legacy and future, he simply continued being himself, one conversation at a time, one person at a time.